Okay, Mr. Gilbert, why don't we start with you? Why don't you give me your name and where you were born and.
All right, now let me ask you another question before we get into this. I say what saved me from farm life or something else. I went through college on a basketball scholarship. You went into that end, but that's not part of the everyday life. But that got me out of the farm.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyhow, you just okay. Are we on?
Yeah.
Are we on record now?
Yeah, we're on the record.
Okay.
So start with your name.
I'm Loy Gilbert.
Why don't you spell that for me?
Born March the 19th, 1914, and of East Texas native. Born in Van Zandt County, eastern portion of the little community Primrose. Attended free teacher school to the 9th grade.
Let me ask, what were your parents' names?
My parents was Julius M. Gilbert. My mother was Lucy Ella Walsh Gilbert. They were married in 1900. Julius was born in 1878. Lucy Ella was born in 1880.
And were they native to Texas?
Julius was born on his mother's farm adjacent to the farm that he bought and where I was born. Julius's grandfather had migrated from Tyler, traded his hotel and livery stable for 1,900 acres of land out in Van Zandt County. And we all grew up on a part of that 1,900 acres.
Did you have brothers or sisters?
I had 3 sisters. They were all considerably older than me. I was the only boy. And my sisters were 8, 10, and 12 years older than me.
Are they still alive?
No, they're all dead.
So you're the last of the
I'm the
children?
last one.
Okay. Now, can you tell me a little about what are your early memories before you went to school, being in the home?
Well, just being familiar with the routine work and chores and operating on a 200-acre farm, cotton and corn farm. Everything depended on the seasons and the rain. And at my earliest recollection, as soon as we were big enough to work, had some chores to do, feeding chickens, horses, and so forth. And my earliest recollections, my dad plowing. I was probably 3 years old. Go to the farm and ride the horse while he was on the horse while he was plowing. And just familiarity with the routine farm chores that was required of a household, where most all the meat and vegetables were grown and canned. Occasional visits to town once a week to get needed bread or something that you didn't have, that you weren't producing on the farm.
What town would you go into?
Been Wheeler mostly, and if it's any major purchase to be made, come to Tyler.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. I'm going to change a case. Okay, what are your recollections about some of the entertainment of the time other than that, what was on the radio?
Well, remember now, at the earliest recollection of growing up, we didn't have the radio. It came in when I was 10, 12 years old. That radio was our first radio. I remember was a Stuart Warner. The actual box with the receiving apparatus in it was probably about 24 inches long and about 8 by 8 high, 8 inches wide, and it had 3 big dials and 2 little ones on the front for fine tuning it. it had a horn, magnifying, setting up on top that where the sound came out. We had to, you had to get an antenna up real high to get that station. And we had two tall sassafras poles, one at the house and one across the road by the barn, about 100 yards apart, with a piece of galvanized wire stretched with insulators on each end from one post to the other. And we had a feed-in wire off of that antenna down and came into the radio. The radio was powered by one 6-volt regular storage battery like you'd put on your automobile, and two dry cell batteries. And it was, when we got that one, my mother was the operator of that radio, be sure that it didn't get out of tune. Mm-hmm. But not every family had a radio. And often on Saturday night, we'd have company people come in to listen to the radio because it was quite a novelty.
Did you get an opportunity to see movies very much in those years?
Well, in my early years, not so much. Believe it or not, we had a movie theater at Ben Wheeler at one time, and get to visit that occasionally. I believe it just operated on Saturday afternoon and Saturday night. Of course, it was a silent movie. Did have a player piano in it.
Did?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And you get all the conversation would appear on the screen. Sometimes it was a little late getting there, but we enjoyed it. Then later, as a teenager, of course, we had the all-talkies in Tyler, and that was quite an elaborate. I remember I was probably 8 or 10 years old, and my younger sister was still at home, and when they had the first all-talking movie at the old Arcadia on the east side of the square, it was a carload of those young folks came to Tyler to see the all-talkie. And I don't recall when I first saw my all-talkie movie.
Let's go back a little to the cotton trade. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what you did to contribute, what kind of work was involved with that?
Well, as I said, my dad was, his money crop was cotton. And my earliest recollection is that we were, plant cotton. Usually plant that cotton in April and try to you'd ply it to get it up. It had to be chopped. And at an early age, I started helping plow the cotton and chop some. I never did like to chop. I'd rather plow than to chop cotton or hoe cotton. But you plant the cotton in April, try to get it up and all chopped out and so forth by June the 1st. And usually you'd plow that cotton 5 times from the time it came up until you ply it for control of the weeds and keep the moisture, keep the ground soft so the moisture would be retained. Usually get that cotton laid by or plowed the last time by 1st of July or the middle of July at least, depending on how wet the spring had been. And then it usually would start opening about August the 15th. That summertime, from the time you laid the crop by until August the 15th, is when you had an opportunity to go fishing or anything else. You were kind of free from farm work during that period of time. If you were going to take a vacation or something, that's the time you took it. The revival meetings were usually held at the church during that interval of time between July, the early part of July, and the tail end of August, because that's when the farm work was kind of at vacation. Then the cotton would usually start opening by the latter part of August, depending on how hot and dry it was. And from there until October, you were busy picking cotton. My duties, from the time I was about 10 or 12 years old, we had, didn't have a big family. You had to depend on help for picking your cotton. And my dad was usually haul the cotton to the gin, have it ginned, and it was my job to keep up with the books, with how much each picker that you had hired was working by the pound. He got paid, or he or she got paid for the amount of cotton they picked, whether it was 200 pounds or 300 pounds. And but it was my job to be there when they weighed cotton, see how much they weighed up, because that became they're going to get paid on that basis. And it usually took about from 12 to 1,500 pounds of seed cotton to make a bale of lint cotton. And when they got that to 12, whatever my dad decided we were going to put in the bale, when they reached that amount, if it was piling it on the ground, if we was putting it in a wagon, they'd start putting it in, emptying it into another wagon, so that we'd have the right amount for a bale. And later, as I got a teenager, I'd often go to the gin if my dad had gone to town or he had something else he wanted to do.
No, he had 1,900 acres.
No, that was my grandfather had it. We only had a 200-acre farm.
Oh, okay. Well, now how many bales could you get out of a 200-acre farm?
Well, usually in that 200-acre farm, you had some allocated to pasture because you had milk cows. Usually we would have probably 70, 80 acres in cotton and probably 30, 40 acres in corn, peas. It would plant for hay or sorghum to be cut for hay, and various, you had different kinds of course, the usual watermelons and peas you might have planted to eat, an acre of sweet potatoes, and a garden and so forth. But of that 78 acres, you'd get from 15 to 25 bales of cotton per year. This East Texas didn't grow the 3 and 4 bales of cotton per acre like they do in the Delta country or in the present irrigated sections of West Texas, New Mexico.
You could earn a living on that rate.
Well, I guess so. I don't know whether we made a living or not, but we lived on what we made.
Okay.
It was, some years it was pretty lean, but the thing about it, everybody was in the same, all the farmers were in the same neighborhood, and we didn't realize we were poor. By today's standard, we'd all been in poverty. But we had enough to eat and wear, and we're healthy.
Were there any pests or inclement weather conditions that you were concerned about at that time pertaining to the crop?
Well, you were always, as then as now, you were always hoping you didn't get a hail because that would destroy you completely. I recall one year we had it was in June, we had a very promising cotton crop. It was about 2 foot high and in full bloom. And we had a big storm one night, and the next morning that 2 foot cotton was just a stump of a stalk about 8 inches high. It had been completely destroyed. And that's what you always dread and hope it don't happen to you.
I don't suppose there was much by way of government protection or insurance.
There was never heard of insurance at that time. No Social Security. If you got wiped out, you just had to look around and see if you could get a job working for somebody else to get you a little money. That's the only time it ever happened to us. We were completely wiped out. I think what we were probably expecting a 25 bale cotton crop was, I think we finally got about 6 or 7 bales that year.
That's pretty bad.
It is.
Pretty bad year.
It really was. You just tighten your belts and hope you made a better crop the next year.
What about medical attention?
Well,
Um,
you had the country doctor, and he the hospital resources were very nil. From our area out there, we had some little hospitals in Tyler, but if you had major surgery, you carried to Dallas. I remember one of my sisters had her appendix taken out, and they carried her to Dallas to have that done. And of course, that was quite a trip. Then for appendicitis, they kept in the hospital for 2 weeks.
that must have hurt.
Beg your pardon?
She had appendicitis attack. How long did it take to get to Dallas at that time?
Well,
Take the car?
you had to start, there's a lot of people didn't make it. I've known one or two that their appendix ruptured before they got there because the roads were poor, and it was about a 4-hour trip to Dallas because the roads were nothing like they are now. And but you relied mostly on the country doctors. When I was very small, one of our neighbors down the road, I remember is Mr. Hilburn. He was a tenant farmer, and he had an acute attack appendicitis, and I think his appendix ruptured. And the doctors at Ben Wheeler then were Dr. Gray and Dr. Lee. And both of them, they operated on him, put him on the dining table. And the reason I remember that, they borrowed our Aladdin kerosene lamp, which gave out a real bright light. And they borrowed a gasoline lantern from one or two of the other neighbors. And they took his appendix out on the dining room table, and he survived. But he relied on those country doctors, and some of them were pretty good. Some of them weren't so good. But most of medical attention, you go get the doctor, and they'd come any time of night, if it was an emergency, they needed to be. And a lot of them didn't get paid, but they believed in helping the people. And I think we were fortunate to, even though they weren't the fine surgeons and so forth we got today, they gave it an earnest attempt.
I'm going to stop now so you can take care of some of your business, looks like. Did you need something, Mr. Gilbert?
I'm always for I beat him out of it. Look at, I tell you what you better do. That,
You got a microphone on you.
let me give you some money. And we never did find out why that pickup wouldn't take gasoline, did we?
No, sir.
Just fill the blame thing up
Okay.
over there, one of those places, and we'll figure out, because I think you're probably less than a fourth of a tank.
I'm right at a four.
Mm-hmm. And we don't want to run out, so let's just do that. You got time to do that?
Oh, yes, sir. I've got plenty of time.
And just put them out a couple more sacks and put the rest of it there in the front where we had that other stuff.
Okay. So 1,000 pounds of mineral,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it right there?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'll get that loaded up and get it back in and drop it off and put out some more to the cows.
Okay.
Fill the truck up with gas and bring it back to Chambers.
Okay.
All right.
Probably won't have much change to bring back.
Not with gas going up like that.
Especially that thing holds 30 gallons.
I heard them say that around April and May, it's liable to be up to $2 a gallon.
Well, I'm not expecting it because the major companies have got all the mom and pop stations closed out.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to Pace's place on Broadway.
Oh, yeah.
They've got the big Exxon sign there.
Yeah.
I think that's the end of the cheap prices.
Oh yeah, I worked for an independent oil company for 40 years, and one of my old bosses always said, if the majors ever got control of it, goodbye, and they've got it now.
Oh yeah, they do.
Well, if the gas goes up like that, I'm just gonna come out here and borrow one of your
Okay,
I know that's what we've been talking about.
okay, okay, Eric, I'll see you when you get
Then
back.
the oil companies will buy all the hay crop and. fix
Say,
it.
how's your teeth?
I got my braces taken off yesterday. They're still loose and everything. They
But
hurt real bad.
he thinks they're gonna tighten up.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. He does.
Okay, I'll see you when you get back, Eric.
Yes, sir.
Okay. He's really a good boy.
Hmm?
He's really a good boy.
Yeah.
He's playing soccer at junior college, and he got hit in the mouth, knocked his front teeth all out, laying on the ground.
Oh man.
He picked him up, put him back, went to emergency, and they kept him to the hospital, kept him waiting 3.5 hours, and all they had to do was call a dental surgeon. Then they finally got to it, and the surgeon told him, said, I don't know why in the world they didn't call, because, you know, time is of the essence when you got those teeth, and you're going to try to get them back in there and save them. And they've got him back in there and fastened in, but he's still, the jury is still out as to whether he's going to save him or not. Okay, that's what you, I didn't realize he was in. We just treat him like he's one of the family.
The lawsuit ready to happen. Anyway. Do you
All right.
want to get that, or someone else gonna get
That's
that?
someone, surely they'll get it. Maddie, can you get that?
There we go.
Oh, now what else? You want to cover the marking of the cotton while you're in that thing,
Yeah,
or what?
let's talk a little about that. And we'll come up a little more to contemporary.
Okay, you know kind of what you want. I don't want